this was a guy I called last night because he said call anytime, and I took him up on that. Certainly when I saw him all over the first episode of last night's The Last Dance, and he was over the second episode too. He was really in the middle of everything in his first stint with the Bulls, and then we saw him in his moment with Charlotte last night during The Last Dance as he gave a little bit of the business to Jordan and the Bulls bench when they're hitting a game-winning shot in the playoffs for Charlotte, who he was with at the time, our buddy B.J. Armstrong back here in the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, B.J.?
Oh, Rich, I'm doing well, and like I said, anytime. You and Susie are,
Thanks.
you guys are family. So you called, and here we are, and you call anytime.
Right back at you on that. Now, I'm wondering what it's like to watch back moments of your glory, and also knowing that you're barking at the bench, no doubt, added fuel to the fire. What do you sit there and go, great shot, but please don't yell at the bench? Do you do that when you're sitting there last night, BJ?
Well, now at my age now, I'm looking like, what were you doing? What were you thinking, right? So I'm looking at myself going, okay, what were you thinking about? But back then, I didn't know any other way other than to compete,
Sure.
Rich. So as a young man, that's what you do. And that's how I learned how to play is you lay it out on the line, you play, you come to win, you come to compete. So, I've been on the other side of, the winning, and I've been on the side of losing. And the one thing you always want to establish, especially when you're in the playoffs, is that, you know what, you came to fight. You came and you were going to bring the energy that was necessary. But it was funny. I was laughing the whole time. It was just so funny to think about, playing and all of those things that you do. And you know what, you get caught up in the game and the emotion, and certainly it was a big win for us as we were starting that series out, even the series 1-1. But as always, Michael and the Bulls, they made the adjustments, and they eventually they won the championship that year. They won the next 3 games against us. But certainly, I was laughing. I was just really in tears laughing about the whole incident.
I bet. Are your kids watching and just seeing what Dad's doing? Stuff
Yeah,
like
my
that?
kids are watching, and it's funny. That's why I was laughing. It's so funny to see their response. They're like, "Dad, what were you doing?" It's like, yeah, that's what you do. If you're going to play, play. If you're not, then go sit down. So. But it's been fun, and all our friends and former teammates and guys, they make fun of you, and it's fun to relive those times. But you know what? That's a game we all played, and we had fun doing it, and everyone has a sense of humor about it now. So it's but those were fun times and brought back some good memories.
B.J. Armstrong here on the Rich Eisen Show. What was it like where were you when you found out Jordan was retiring for the first time? Where were you?
Rich, the one thing I do recall is that it happened very close to the season. I think it was only like 2 or 3 days before we were about to start training camp, or somewhere around
October.
there.
Yeah. October. Yep.
And sometime in like October or sometime. It was right before. So, the one thing that I remember is that we didn't have time to prepare for this moment, and you don't just lose. We felt like we were losing a family member, right? We were losing a great player, but we were more concerned about, the person and what he was going through in his life and his personal life. And then we didn't have time to put together the team or get ourselves ready or try to figure out how we were going to play. It was like it happened quickly. And by the way, we have a season about to start. So, what I remember most about that season was you saw the emergence of Scottie Pippen, and that's the one thing that I always recall, and to never lose sight that, Scottie Pippen was an MVP, caliber player that year. He had an amazing season. I would always argue that was probably his best season individually that he had, and he was just incredible. I mean, for you to go from the number 2 guy to the number 1 guy, and then he was consistently hands down a top 5 player, and he could have easily been the MVP of the league that year. And that's what allowed us to make that transition because there was no time to do it. I mean, we all were just kind of doing this on the fly, and then we ended up winning 55 games that year. We ended up taking the Knicks to 7 games in the conference semifinals. So, it was a very successful year that we had, and everyone just kind of did it and moved on. And Phil did a great job as well coaching. That might be probably his finest hour as well, coaching individually, because we had to figure it out as we went along.
Well, and putting it all together, what you just said, BJ, the seventh game against the Knicks, you got to it because Kukoc made the shot in Chicago when Scotty wouldn't come off the bench. So that was such a fascinating part of last night's Last Dance documentary. Were you all surprised in the huddle that Phil called a play for Toni and not Scotty?
Well, when you're in the moment, you're just trying to figure out how to win the game. And we had played well enough to win that game, and we had a sense of desperation because we were already down 0-2. So that was a must game for us as we were coming back home. And sometimes, as a player, you have a feel. Sometimes as a coach, you have a feel. And you know what? It wasn't a matter if it was right or wrong. I understood where Scotty was coming from. I understood, and I got where Phil felt that was the best opportunity for us to potentially win that game. And it was just, it happened. When I remember playing, it was happening, but I couldn't get sidetracked with that, because we still had to figure out how to win this game. So Toni hits the shot, and the one thing I do remember still, like it happened yesterday, was the speech that Bill Cartwright gave. I mean, it was one of the most heartfelt speeches I've ever seen. And Bill was clearly, he had so much wisdom and what he brought to that moment, because that moment could have gone a bunch of different ways. But Bill was able to somehow resolve the issue where, everyone in that room understood what had just happened. And Bill didn't have a lot of things to say. He chose his words carefully, but he said what needed to be said, and he brought so much passion. I remember, he was in tears about what happened because we cared about Scotty. We cared about our group. We had come too far and done too many things and experienced too many things to allow anything on the outside to disrupt this group. So, to this day, I tip my hat off to Bill. That was one of the great moments in my basketball career of having an opportunity to see leadership at its apex. And that was one of those moments because it needed to be said, and he said it. We resolved it. We moved on, and we were able to play and win the next game and ultimately almost win that series.
So what did you think of when you heard Scotty say last night that he would not have changed that moment, that he would not have gone back and handled it differently if he had the opportunity?
Yeah, it's like one of those things. I chuckled, right? And I chuckled when I heard that because I know Scotty, and I know, the pressures that it takes to be, in that position. And I can only imagine what he was feeling at that time. And I can only imagine all of the things that we all were feeling, right? We all felt the burden of allowing New York to come back and tie up that game. So I got it, but I do know this: when the game had to be played and what we were going to do, we knew Scotty was going to be there, and he knew we were going to be there for him. So it was like one of those things. It was said, but you know what? Scotty is our guy. We love him, and we know the type of guys and relationship that we have with one another, and then you move on. So, but I laughed when I heard that, because you know what? It was just like, yeah, you do things, and we all saw what happened. But the thing is, as a group, as a team, we are always going to figure out things, and that was what I knew about our group. We will figure it out as we go along.
So one of the things that we laugh about, BJ, here on our show, Chris Brockman and I, and the rest of us watching this documentary, is Kukoc's reaction. Does he think you're all just totally insane? I mean, just the Americans are just insane. It's just like, what's the matter with you people?
It's great that you picked up on it. When I first met Toni, like it was like in 1984 and 85, we played against each other in high school, and Toni has this sense of humor. And being around him, you catch it, but it's really funny because he talks that way, like hey, what's going on? Do you really know what's happening here? He has this sense of humor, so you picked up on it. Toni is really funny that way.
It's just like, what's the matter with you
I was
people?
just talking to him recently,
Right?
but that's his sense of humor, and you got to be around him to get it. But that's funny that you picked up on that.
Yeah, we just think he sits there every time, just like, I'm just trying to play my game. I'm just trying to be myself. And these people are insane. Like, Krause and Michael. I had nothing to do with that. I had nothing to do with anything other than I'm just trying to win a game. That's basically what it looks like to me.
I know. I know he's really funny, and that's him though. He's like, he says it with like a straight face, so it makes it funnier.
Yes.
He's like, hey, what are you talking about? Like, what are these people doing? Like, But
That's what it looks like to
he's
me.
really he really has a sense of humor. So that's a really good catch by you.
Thank you, BJ Armstrong here on the Rich Eisen Show. A few more minutes left with BJ. So you're sitting around one day, and Michael Jordan, who's left White Sox camp because of the labor dispute with baseball, he calls you up and he's just asked you what's going on, and you eventually invite him to the Berto Center, and suddenly he's coming back. So my question for you is, if you didn't invite him to the Berto Center, would the comeback have happened, or do you think he called you up knowing he's already coming back and you were just part of the plan? BJ, walk me through that.
Well, I have no idea. I'm gonna say the latter. I think I was just part of the plan, right? I think he, like, in the end, I don't know what it was. I just knew that Rich wanted just to be a good friend, right? He'd always be there for me. He would always call me during the season. I was calling him, and we were just checking in on one another to make sure things were good. And the one thing I wanted him to be, and one thing I wanted him to know was that, hey, whatever you need, we're always here, and you're always welcome, and that you're not alone on whatever you have going on, and that was it. So when he did call, or however we got together, I was just like, okay, let's see what's going on. I haven't seen him in a while, and it was good. And one thing led to another, and we're talking, and we kind of like, it just happened. But I firmly believe that, that all of us, right, the entire team, the group, we always wanted him to know that he was part of our group. And we always wanted him to know that whatever he had going on, he always had a home, and he could come there and share that with us. So, I don't know what it was. I knew he felt comfortable enough to come back in the building, continue talking all the trash that he talks, be the big personality that he was, but more importantly, to be one of the guys. And that was great for him. I thought it was great for the game. And here I'll just say I'm taking no credit for that, because in the end, you just want to see your friends happy. And that was one of the great moments for all of us, because we picked up where we left off, and everyone was just talking trash. He's still talking to everyone. He's doing his thing. And it was a great moment for all of us, because everyone was happy to see him when he did come back in the building.
Well, his thing, BJ, was front and center as part of the documentary last night, and whether it was something that was right. Obviously, it was something that needed to happen in order to win and bring everybody along with him and understand what you needed to do in order to be in his orbit. But the question is, his thing, was it sometimes too much? You even asked the question, they included in the documentary, is he a nice guy or not? And we saw Jordan at one point say, if you don't agree with it, that means you haven't won anything, which is defiant, if not only, insulting to some people potentially. But then you could see he broke down. He broke down talking about the pressure of having that attitude. What did you think of when you saw that last night, BJ?
Well, I think, Rich, when this first started, I kind of always, I was a little bit, I didn't know how this was going to turn out, because I know that side. I know that side of him, that he's competitive, and I know what it could look like from the outside looking in. But I also know that if you're going to make a commitment to excellence, you got to make this commitment. Either you're all in and you're all out. The thing, Rich, about him that I know and that we all know, and I think we're seeing, and I think there probably will go there in episode 9 and 10, is that, Rich, he loved the game. and he had this respect for the game at the highest level, right? The goal wasn't to be the greatest player. The goal wasn't to be the leading, vote getter or, MVP of the league, or to be the considered whatever it is people want to debate about. His goal was to respect the game to the highest level and always hold it as the number one priority in his life. And Rich, that is very difficult, right? Sometimes life gets in the way, but somehow he managed to have the discipline to love the game to that degree because, Rich, why would someone care that much? He's achieved everything individually. He's achieved everything with his team, but he loved the game that much where he cared. And that, Rich, has a vulnerability to it that I understood. He cared, Rich. And you don't practice the way you practice. You don't figure out how to prepare yourself the way he was preparing himself unless you truly, truly care. And he loved the game of basketball. He was an artist who dedicated his life to the craft. And that's what I was concerned about, because when you are living your life that vulnerable, you saw his vulnerability. You saw how he broke down, emotionally. You saw how he prepared himself. You saw how he pushed himself. There was no reason for him to do that other than there was this innate love that he had for the game, and I got it. I got that. I didn't find a problem playing with him because I saw something I knew I was never going to see again in my life. Someone who loved what they did to the maximum level and was willing to do whatever. He never cheated on the line drills. He never cheated the game of basketball. And everything he did was with this one focus in mind. And I just admired it from afar. And I think all of us knew what he was committed to. He made a commitment with his life to the game of basketball, and no one could argue that.
BJ, really appreciate the time as always. And screw it. I'm booking you for next week too. We got to get your 2 cents on when we're through this whole thing, for sure.
Well, thank you, Rich. Anytime. You
Thanks,
guys
BJ.
be well and stay safe.
You too. That's BJ Armstrong, 3-time NBA champion. And again, one of the 3 players the year after Jordan left to make the All-Star game. Scottie Pippen, Horace Grant, and BJ Armstrong. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.